Hey everyone, Natalie Antonov again with Gable Music Ventures for another interview with the experts. Today we have music industry experts with us from Soundgirls. We have Barb Adams and Danielle Lewis. They are both really kick-ass awesome ladies. Barb is an audio engineer, production manager, industry educator at Rowan University, a mom, and Philadelphia chapter president for Soundgirls. Danielle has done all of the jobs: front of house, monitor, engineer, stage manager, road manager, and is now the production manager for the Keswick Theater in Glenside, PA. Both of these ladies have too massive of a resume doing live sound production for me to go through right now. They've done it at venues, they've done it on tour routes, working with national acts, all in between, and all while bringing their mission of inspiring and empowering the next generation of women in audio. Suffice to say, they are two of the most kick-ass women I've ever talked to. So this is going to be an interview that you don't want to miss even 1 minute of. Let's get into it. Hey, ladies, how you doing today?
Good. And yourself?
Good to hear. I'm doing well. I'm really excited to talk to you both, considering you have just like the biggest resumes I think I've ever read in my entire life for sound engineering and production, etc. So let's get into a little bit about each of you. Barb, why don't you go first?
Awesome. Yeah, I like how you said that I think both of us have extensive experience in live sound, and I think that just goes with the job a lot of times. So my career started actually by going to school for audio recording to work in a studio, and I went to a school called Full Sail down in Florida. Immediately after that, I started at a recording studio called Sonic Recording Studios in Philadelphia, which is sadly not around anymore. But even in school, I had a larger interest in live sound. Live sound when I was in school was a very small part of the overall education, but that was, I think, what sparked the most interest in the time that I spent there. And so when I got out of school, I was kind of looking for opportunities like that. Although I started in the studio, I was immediately filling in at small clubs. A few of those were the Barbary and Grape Street Lounge at that point in Philly, and eventually got my first, like, I guess, full-time gig doing live sound at the Trocadero. And then I kind of moved my way up through various venues in Philly. So I've worked for Electric Factory. I have worked for World Cafe Live. And then I went back to the small venue. So in, I guess 2005, I went back to Grape Street. They had opened up a larger venue, so it wasn't quite that small, but they'd opened up like a medium-sized venue. I guess it was a 400 capacity room. And so I became first monitor engineer there, then front of house and production manager. They closed in 2008, which was the same year my son was born. And was kind of work for months, but then landed at the Tin Angel in Old City. And I stayed there for 9 years before they closed in 2018. Those owners opened up a new venue called The Locks in Manayunk. And we've been open there since, I guess, when did we open? 2019, like fall of 2019. In between all of those venues, I also went on tour with a few smaller bands, mostly regional, but then I had a couple US tours with various bands, mostly staying at home though, especially after 2008 when I had my son. Touring was not something that I really wanted to do with a young son at home. I wanted to be home with him. So venue work kind of fit into my lifestyle and what I wanted. I started teaching in 2010 at Drexel University as an adjunct. And then in 2016, I started at Rowan University. And then 2 years ago, nope, 4 years ago. Think about this. I became full-time at Rowan University. So now I'm full-time educator, still doing sound at night at the Locks and for various festivals during the summer months, and then running the local chapter for Soundgirls.
Wow.
That's the gist of it.
That is just amazing that you do all of these things. It's freaking fantastic. I love it. That's awesome. How I can juggle all that, but we'll talk about that later. How about yourself, Danielle?
I have a different path than Barbara. I did not start off doing sound. I was a systems analyst at Verizon. I had a corporate job. I volunteered at night and on the weekends at my church. I was singing in a pretty prominent gospel choir in Philadelphia for a few years. And when the director decided to disband it, I was thinking, like, how do I stay connected to music? I do play an instrument, but not well. I don't, I wouldn't claim to be a bass player, but so I just was trying to figure out what can I do to still stay connected to music, because I absolutely, absolutely, absolutely love music. And I was like, I have a math and science background. I like physics. I was like, sound is, let's do some research on this. So I started doing some reading and just kind of dove in. I volunteered at a small sound company in Delaware just to get, hands-on experience. And I did it part-time, nights and weekends, and it just kind of evolved and grew to the point where in 2003, I decided to kind of take a step of faith, or a leap of faith rather. And I retired from Verizon and I started doing this full time. It was scary because the whole stability of, giving up a job where you have a pension and all those all those wonderful things. But, I absolutely love music. And so in 2003, I changed careers and started doing it. And from there, it was kind of like, okay, I freelance here and there, would do things. I started working for PSAV at a hotel. So that, did the AV game for a while. And then I had the opportunity in 2007. Fred Hammond is a prominent gospel artist. And I got a friend of mine called me, was like, hey, I got the perfect job for you. I can't do it, so I'm going to give your name. And I was like, well, what is it? And he was like, I'm going to give your name to be the road manager for Fred Hammond's next tour. And it was his 25th anniversary tour. And I was like, I have never been what? But I'm good at project management. I'm good at, certain things. So he just referred me. And I was like, okay, I never did it before, but I'm going to go with it. And it turned out to be wonderful. Like, it was the hardest 6 weeks of work, but it was so gratifying. It was just great. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. So after that, my family thought I was crazy. They're like, you gonna quit your job? Because I had a job at a AV company, and they were like, I was like, yeah, I'm quitting my job to go on tour with Fred Hammond. Are you crazy? So I quit my job and I went out on tour, and I came back and I was like, okay, what do I do now? I have a job. What am I going to do? So I just freelanced for a couple of years and just kind of, honed my skills, networked to meet people and kept it going. In 2012, I had another opportunity to go on tour with Lettucey. She's an R&B artist. I was her monitor engineer for that tour. And those were great experiences. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say that I would want to tour all the time. And now that I'm a little older, I don't think it's kind of rough on your body, but to at least say that I've experienced that, I'm grateful for having that experience. So I wasn't touring with people those times. I just freelanced. I traveled the country doing corporate work when music was not necessarily, thriving, or, I couldn't get a music gig. And, I PM'd for various AV companies, did corporate stuff, because wherever there's an event, you need lighting, sound, and, video. So, I just kind of learned all that I could, doing all that I can. And that's probably, the best thing for anybody that's going to do this, kind of learn and gather as many tools as you can. And then, just keep hustling and doing your thing. So then I've worked for NBC Sports, did that for a while. And then right before the pandemic, I think it was either December, it was maybe November, December, Barb was like, hey, a friend of mine is leaving the Keswick, and, he's the PM. He's been the PM for like 20, 25 years. She was like, it's a job that's opening up. She was like, I want you to apply for it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. No worries. Okay. And I applied for it and I got the job. Literally, I was there 3 weeks and the pandemic hit. So it was like whammo. So I joke around. I still keep in contact with the people that are at the Keswick during, the downtime because the theater still isn't open. But I joke with them. I said, I'll still be a new employee when we come back to to the show. So that's the running joke. So so that's kind of in a nutshell what I've been doing.
Yeah, it's hard to put all of that in a nutshell, honestly.
It is. We've done so much, and it's like you forget more probably than we can probably remember, and who we've met and who we've worked with. But I'm sure our stories are similar to various people who do what we do. So
Yeah, I mean, it definitely different from what Barb said. And it's kind of a perfect segue into what I was going to ask you first, which was, what are your guys' respective thoughts on education as part of the process in getting a job doing live sound? Is it necessary? Kind of cool? Should you do it? Should you not do it? Does it depend? What do you think?
I think we're both prime examples of that, right? Because I went to school, but Danielle didn't. And it really depends on you, on your personality, on your perseverance, and your ability to kind of learn on the job. And I think regardless of whether you go to school or not, you're still going to have to learn on the job, right? So like school gives you a background, it gives you the theory, and it gives you some experience. And for me, that was necessary because I didn't know anyone in the industry. I was also, I guess, what you could call an introvert in some aspects, although I think some of my friends would disagree with me about that. But I was very shy, and I wasn't very outgoing, especially when I was getting started. And so I didn't know, one, I didn't know where to go. And two, I wasn't of the type that was going to be able to maybe hang out with somebody in the studio or hang out with somebody at a live show and really absorb everything in order to do something. And I've always been the type, like, I always want to learn how to do something before I jump in the fire. Whereas Danielle just kind of jumped in the fire. I want to know what's going on before I get there. So I guess I'm a little more cautious in that aspect. Regardless of what you choose to do, I think we live in a time where school is important. So regardless of whether you go for audio, if you're a high school student considering what the next path may be, there are a lot of options out there. So there are tech schools. Just getting a 4-year liberal arts degree is helpful. It gives you an opportunity to get out and meet people outside of the pocket that you might be in right now. Going to school to meet new people and experience things that you might not be exposed to when you're young. That's completely opposite if you are older, and maybe you already have a college degree or you're just not in the position to go to college at this time. There are a lot of opportunities out there to network with people and learn from different, Soundgirls being one of them, but there are tons of ways that do that.
Mm-hmm. And Danielle, do you have any other thoughts on the education portion?
Yeah, I to piggyback on what Barb said, it's definitely important. When I went to Drexel, they did not even have the music industry program. So there was no, unless I went to like American University or Lebanon Valley, which is up in somewhere in Pennsylvania. It's like near Hershey. Those were the only schools that I saw that had like a 4-year audio engineering degree. But again, I didn't start off. This path found me. I didn't, I didn't grow up and say, "Oh, I'm gonna be a sound engineer." That didn't even occur to me. So I think that it's very important to get the formal education if it's available to you, but understand that if you get the hands-on, that is equally as valuable because you have to do the job. There's no, the textbook can describe scenarios, but until you're in that situation under fire, like, okay, 5 minutes to show, and you don't know why you don't have sound on a channel, or you have to go swap a cable in a show, like any of these things are not going to be described. And even if you read it in a book, you're like, oh, well, all I have to do is, well, that's very different than actually being on the side of the stage and having to actually do something. So definitely, if you can marry the two, that would be wonderful. But I would encourage someone to go after the formal education, but don't be discouraged if it's not available, or if you can't do it. Volunteer your personal and your personal skill, your people skills rather, are going to take you equally, if not farther, because you have to get along with people, you have to network, you have to, be reliable, be dependable. All of these things, your soft, what they deem perhaps soft skills, will definitely take you equally as far.
All right. I think that was a really good way to kind of sum it up. And you guys, like you said, are living examples of, both different tracks. And I'm sure there's probably a few more tracks that, anyone could possibly take to get to where you are. So appreciate your insight on that. So getting to the nitty gritty here, some events and venues don't provide sound engineers for their, shows, and that makes the band have to do it themselves, right? It's a DIY situation, regardless of whether they want to or not. What are some budget-friendly bag items that you think that everyone should have in their gig bag?
This is a hard one because it really depends on the situation, right? So it depends on what type of places you're playing. If you're playing in a small coffee shop where everyone's quiet and is listening to you, then it's like one style of mixing. But if you're playing in a noisy bar where everyone's talking, then you might need more gear. And it really depends on your budget, what you can afford. So when we're talking about PA systems, obviously I think it's really important that you do your research, that you get out and talk to people that are using that gear, get out and listen to it, right? So you can read a bunch of specs in, go to Sweetwater and see a whole bunch of specs for gear, and try to compare them that way, but that's not going to tell you what these boxes might actually sound like. And there's different different requirements if you are a singer-songwriter versus a rock band. And so, understanding what is out there, doing your research is really important. I think for any artist, monitors are extremely important. Being able to hear yourself in a venue, right? So making sure that whatever you buy is going to be able to be set up in a way that you're going to be able to hear yourself so that you can give the best performance that you can give, right? And so there are a lot of options for that. You can buy little wedges that, separate from the PA system. You can have in-ear monitors now, and there's some more affordable versions and some really expensive versions of that. As far as your consoles go, it really depends. Again, are you just a singer-songwriter, or are you a full rock band? On how many inputs do you actually need? What microphones do you need? For a singer-songwriter, it's really easy. You can buy like a really small analog mixer that's got maybe 4 channels on it for a microphone and a direct for your guitar. But if you're a rock band, depending on the room, are you going to need to put mics on guitar amps or drums? And let me be very specific here. Not every room needs you to mic everything, right? I think this might be a good place to actually explain stage volume as well, right? And being able to balance what your stage volume is to what is actually going out to the people who are listening to you. I think that's a a conversation I have with bands a lot, you know, as an engineer. But if you're doing things yourself, then you have to understand what that is as well, and be able to hear it. One of the best things, have a friend come with you to the show and stand out in the audience and give you some information that would be helpful, right? So like, does it sound okay? Can you hear the person? You know, are the instruments balanced? Things like that. You know, in addition to the PA, the cables, the monitors, you know, cabling. So it can get pretty expensive if you're going out and buying all of your own gear. If you're only playing every once in a while, maybe it's worth just renting from a company. There are a lot of different sound companies out there that rent small PA systems that you can team up with. You know, have the venue pay you a little bit more so you can rent the gear from someone else. I'm always of the camp is, you know, if I'm going to invest in something, it's got to be worth it, right? For me financially to invest in it. And I'm actually looking at upgrading some of my own gear right now. And I'm debating whether, you know, spending twice as much for the bigger, better thing is worth it, or if I, you know, am okay getting the mid-range kind of stuff. So, you know, doing your research and figuring out what is going to benefit you. Danielle, you got anything to add to that?
No, you covered pretty much everything. What I would say would be, if you're, you know, you covered the PA very well. But also musicians, they should bring their own adapters or multiple adapters, because you can't rely on someone else having something that you may need. So spend the extra money to have a couple options for your outputs. Yes, okay, everybody should have a 1/4-inch cable to go to a DI if you're a keyboardist, but we encounter oftentimes, even in advancing shows, and you can ask us about that, I guess, whatever that may mean, we can explain that. But you know, you ask for the gear that they're bringing, and inevitably they won't say, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, the drummer has he's bringing a laptop, or he's bringing this particular machine and it has this out, and you're like, okay. I mean, we do it and we make it work and happen, but it's always good if you have some sort of specialty cable or something that's specific to a piece of equipment that you're bringing. Spend the extra money and buy that particular accessory, so it's easier for you to get the sound check done and get things done when you show up at a particular gig.
Got it.
I'm going to add one thing to that. I'm sorry. So one of the most common things I see today with singer-songwriters especially are vocal effects, right? And so everyone's buying these really cool vocal effect pedals or a TC Helicon.
Yep.
If you have a piece of gear like that, make sure you have everything that you need to connect that piece of gear, right? So the cable going from the microphone to the effect, and the cable coming from the effect to a direct box or to the input of a PA system. Don't always assume that, you know, a venue is going to have those specific things. So that's just being a little more specific on what Danielle said. I've had plenty of times where, you know, guitarists will show up without a 1/4-inch cable.
Yep.
Always have a 1/4-inch cable. If you play a guitar, if you play any kind of instrument that needs to be plugged into a direct box, carry your own 1/4-inch cables.
Can I say, let's go so far as to ask them to bring 2 1/4-inch cables?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It's funny that you mentioned the effects, because literally last week I did a video shoot and we were capturing a live performance, and they had that specific, the Live Voice Extreme 3, I think that's what it was. Mm-hmm. And so because I was just recording and capturing it, I had a little Zoom F8, so I was just recording it. I wasn't providing reinforcements. So I said, make sure you bring an amp so you can hear. Well, I didn't think I needed to say, since it was set up in her house and she hears, I didn't think I needed to specifically say, bring female XLR to 1/4-inch to plug into your amp, because I didn't think I needed to say it. And lo and behold, I didn't tell her that. And she gets there and she has male XLR to male quarter inch. And I'm like, well, in my head, I would said had a very different conversation, but I was just like, okay, well, how did you think this was going to happen? So we had to end up from the venue. Thank God we were in Bartram Gardens. They had a speaker. So they were like, oh, Danielle, what are we going to do? So I was going to drive to a shop somewhere, go pick up the cables. And then I was like, wait, do they have a PA system here? And they were like, yeah. I said, go get the speaker. Because I was like, I use that as her monitor, and we
It's
can
like a
bypass
powered
her.
monitor, yeah.
Exactly. And they had an EV speaker. So I just used that. But it's interesting that you mentioned that specific piece of gear, because that's literally what happened last week. So yes, people need to bring all the associated cables that they possibly can bring.
And I would add, if you're a singer these days, buy your own microphone. I think pre-COVID, I probably would have never said that. But I think we're at a time where safety and health reasons, it's always a good idea to have your own microphone. And again, research the different microphones that are out there. Not every microphone is suited for every voice. I think, in general, an SM58 is an all-around good mic, and I have never found somebody that it did not sound good on. But if you're going to think about, going into the Sennheiser or Audix or Neumann round of microphones, then do your research and make sure you're choosing something that is suitable for your voice and your what you need on stage.
And so it's funny because part of that conversation ended up kind of flipping into some of the stuff that I know I'm going to ask you guys afterwards, which is, specific things that you should pay attention to or do when you're working with the live sound crew, as opposed to doing your DIY, thing on your own. And you're right. Every group is different. It could be a solo, it could be a duo, it could be a trio. And I think some of the best information that you gave was, have a friend listen for you, because if nobody's doing it, nobody's going to be able to tell you. You have no idea what's going on out there in the public, unless the crowd yells at you that they can't hear you or something's not turned on, which is always a great thing to hear. Yeah. But no, I love all that. Now, when we do, and since we can kind of transition into this whole working with a live, sound crew, there's sound check. Not everybody gets a sound check, but when you get a sound check, what on your end are things that you would say to a band if you could have the best band sound check on the planet? How would they do this for you to make you do it quickly and get it done?
Danielle, this would be the perfect time to talk about advancing.
Right, exactly. That was on the top of my list. Whenever a great sound check is a prepared sound check. It is one in which the venue or the production company or the sound company has everything that you're going to bring. They have the gear set and waiting for you to show up. It is helpful if the band comes on time, all members of the band. It's helpful if they bring all that they're supposed to bring. And if they're having a problem, maybe the road manager, the MD, which is the musical director, somebody can call and say, hey, we don't have, as opposed to waiting till we're there. And then they go, oh, by the way, I don't have this. The front end is very important for a smooth day or a better day. During sound check, it's great if typically bands they're not going to give all their energy. So know that whenever there's going to be a difference between sound check and when the first song hits, the energy is going to be different. So if you think that you're going to get close to levels, but you got to understand, like if they're, doing their thing at sound check and you have everything like really super loud, the first song is going to blow you out the water because their energy is going to be it's going to be at least probably 5 to 10% more than what they gave you at sound check. So understanding that, like I mentioned that in a class to somebody, they were like, oh, we never thought about that. I said, because you haven't done it. But if you do it once or twice, you remember like, oh crap, I need to turn my faders down a little bit. Or you're like, wait a minute, who are these people coming out here when they weren't the same people that were doing sound check, because they're reserving their energy. So if I would say one of the most important things is, like Barb mentioned, advancing both sides of the coin, being prepared, the sound company being prepared with what they're supposed to provide for the artist, and the artist having given the proper information so that when you come in, everybody can speak, hey, get settled, plug in, and just start playing. That's a great day.
And when people advance with you, and I may this might be different from for every sound company or group, but what kinds of ways would they present this information to you?
Normally it's via a rider. It's great if you have a rider. Please, every band, big or small, I don't care who you are, have a rider, because it gives the production company or the venue your expectations to know what they should be providing for you, what gear you prefer. If you're not sure, do what Barb said, research. I don't have no idea what console I want to use. Okay, what are other people using who do what I do? What are, bands my size? What do they prefer? I went to this show and it sounded great. Let me go talk to the engineer and see what they were using. Do your research to build your writer. And another thing, keep your writer updated. So often we get writers and it's just like, oh, well, it wasn't on the writer. It's like, oh, we never update that. Well, what the heck good use is it? I mean, I don't need I need updated information. If you haven't updated it in 5 years and stuff has changed, you do yourself as well as me a disservice. So, keep an updated writer on what your needs are, what your requirements are, and, what you need backline wise, which is the instrumentation. And, keep that current so that, again, the two teams can play together and it'll be a great day, hopefully.
So I'm going to add to this because I think it's important for people to understand what goes in a rider. And she kind of explained it, but I'm going to break it down even further. So she mentioned backline, right? So if you are traveling and maybe you're not carrying all of your equipment with you, and this happens, especially even on larger tours, it happens when, let's say, the band is playing a show in Philly, but they're going to go do a radio show in Jersey or in New York the morning of that concert. Well, their gear is heading to Philly, but in New York, they need a certain amount of stuff. So they would have a backline list, and that backline list is going to be very specific as to what type of drums do you need? What type of guitar amps do you need? What type of keyboard do you need? So having that list, regardless of whether you are actually carrying your own or not, I think it's helpful to kind of list that out and have a backline list in case for any reason you're going to go to a venue where you're not allowed to use your backline, or you are have double gigs that day and your backline has to be set up at one location and you've got to go do another show at another location. So having that backline is really important. The second part of it, or the next part of it, is a stage plot. So you can actually get these you can do these for free. There's a program called Stage Plot Pro that has a 30-day trial. You don't have to pay for it. So for 30 days, you can go in there and create your own stage plot. You can also do this on a piece of paper and draw, if you're a good artist, draw what your stage looks like. Where are the drums? Where do the guitar amps go? Who stands where? And then where you might need power for your gear is really important in that. The third aspect is an input list. So an input list is telling us exactly what we need to mic on the stage. So if you think about it, an input list is not drums, bass, guitar, vocal. Like, it's more detailed than that, right? Because drums, I'm gonna need a kick drum mic, a snare drum mic, a hi-hat mic, a rack tom mic, a floor tom mic, so forth and so on, right? So every single thing that needs a microphone needs to be put into this input list, which is generally put into like a column kind of sheet, like Excel or columns in Word or Google Docs, because I don't even know if anybody uses Word anymore. So, those are the three big aspects of a tech writer, right? So what backline you need, the stage plot, and your input list. Some other things that you might want to put in there might be who plays in the band, right? So like, you know, how many members are in the band? How many monitors do you need on stage? That's really important. And that could be put into your stage plot, like where you need monitors. And then the last one that I always love seeing in a rider, as a monitor engineer or somebody who has to do monitors from front of house, is having a monitor request sheet. So for each person in the band, it actually lists what things they like to hear in their monitor. And that helps soundcheck go a little bit easier, because I have this list in front of me that says, okay, you know, Michael is the drummer and he wants just kick, snare, and bass. Got it, easy, right? But the guitarist on stage right might need a little bit of everybody. Right. So those, you know, having those lists are really helpful. Something when you arrive at the venue. So those things should be sent anywhere from 1 month to 1 week before the show even happens. Mm-hmm. And I generally say even 2 weeks before the show happens, because I might not get around to it as a production manager. Now, see, I'm at a smaller venue than Danielle, so like I can advance a show that's a week from now, whereas Danielle actually needs. So, okay, for Keswick, what do you need? You probably need like at least 1 month to 2 months.
Yeah, at least a month, because it's like you're advancing multiple shows consecutively, mm-hmm. So it's kind of like you're doing 5 at a time. So, wow. Yeah.
And you also have to have an idea of who you need to hire for that day, right? Like how many stagehands you need. So at my venue, I'm the only person. So I'm doing everything. So I don't have to bring in extra people, whereas Danielle might for the Keswick. Mm-hmm. So depending on the size of the venue, may determine how early you need to advance that show. But you always want to find out who the production manager or front of house engineer for the venue is, and make sure that they actually get the updated information, whatever the current information is for your band. So that's before you even walk in the venue. Yep. When you show up, well, once that information is received, then we start to have a conversation about you know, what time load-in is. Mm-hmm. What time sound check is, mm-hmm. what time the show, what time doors open, and then what time is the show going to start, or what time do you go on, because there might be 5 or 6 bands that play that night. Mm-hmm. And so all of those things are planned out well in advance of the show. So when I have a load in time, I might tell a band like, okay, you're going to load in at 4 o'clock. So my venue's a lot later. Danielle's load ins might be at like 8 a.m. Right. Because there's a lot more that needs to be done. Right. So my load in might be at 4 o'clock. We're going to sound check at 5. So that gives you an hour from the time you load in to get all of your gear set up on stage and find parking. Because we're in Philly.
Yeah. Parking is the thing.
So, you know, that's another thing that you want to advance with the venue is, where are you going to park when you get to the venue? Don't leave that up until like the day of and you're like driving around in circles trying to find a place to park, right? Ask the venue there. Most of the time I'm giving suggestions to people on where I'm free. Sometimes that doesn't always work out.
Again, when you said most of the time, because I lost that chunk.
Oh, I said most of the time. Sorry. Most of the time I'm actually giving, you know, bands that information of where to park, or, you know, telling them about what the load-in is like at my venue. So at my venue, you have to load your gear up a flight of stairs. No one's going to help you with that. So don't, you know, the thing is, like, if that advance hadn't happened, that band would show up and then look at the stairs and be like, I can't carry this up a flight of stairs. Well, if you had advanced the show, you would have known this ahead of time, right? So, I mean, I reach out to bands, I make sure, but not all venues do that. And so you want to have all that information before you even show up. Day of show, I think it's really important when you arrive to introduce yourself. Find the engineer, right? And here's the thing, like, you know, I think it's important to understand, yes, we as venue staff know that traveling is really hard on people. So I try to be as pleasant as I can when bands arrive. Some days I have a bad day. And so when bands arrive, they need to understand that as well. And like I think on both sides we always need to like present ourselves as best as we can in that introduction. Um and be as pleasant as we can, because we're going to end up working together for a few hours. And so to make the best of whatever situation you might be in. So that you know, all that introduction stuff, you know, getting the layout of the venue. Is there a dressing room? Where is it? Do I get fed? How am I getting fed? You know, is there any hospitality situation? Now hopefully that's been advanced and you know that well ahead of time. Some venues don't and some venues do. So
I'm assuming you get asked that a lot as a, you know, sound person. Not that you put the event together, not that you're, you know, the person in charge of that part of it, but I'm sure you get asked a lot.
yeah, so and a lot of times that is the job of the sound person. It depends on the size of the venue, right? The sound engineer is generally the face of the venue as it becomes with artist relations, right? Unless there is a promoter who is there, or a production manager in Danielle's case. I wear all of those hats in my venue. And so, and I can tell you, you know, at World Cafe Live, a lot of times, you know, the sound staff we were the only interaction, you know, the production manager might not have been on during that time. So it just depends on the venue, and who you interact with. And there might be multiple people. So
yeah, and to piggyback off of that, oftentimes because they're already on the phone with you, like I pass as a production manager of the Keswick, I'm not necessarily handling hospitality. I do the preliminary stuff, then pass it off to the catering staff. But because I'm already on the phone with them and we've already had a half an hour conversation, they will relay messages, because why should they hang up and then just call another person? So they just kind of like, I'm already talking to you. I'm gonna give you this information. Can you tell this person, or can you tell? So we end up being the funnel. We end up being the take catch all, and then we disseminate the information where it needs to go.
Wow. I never really realized that, you know, that kind of stuff would end up falling on your shoulders, regardless. But that's crazy. And keeping that all in check while you're trying to help the band set up, while you're trying to manage, you know, what you have, what you don't have, what they forgot to tell you, and all that kind of stuff all at once.
Yeah. I mean, you could be in the middle of, you know, sometimes you're focused, you're getting a lot done on this particular advance, and the phone rings, bam. And it's like, okay, well, hey, Danielle, you know, this is such and such from such and such. I got that, whatever you asked for. And you're like, oh, crap, I really can't deal with this right now, but I have to, because they could be out on tour. They may not be in an office, so they can call you when they get the chance. Like there was a comedy act prior, you know, when I first got to the Keswick, it was like I had my first day, we had 5 shows the first week I was there. So I walked straight in like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing, you know, that sort of thing. But, you know, I played tag with a production manager that was a Peruvian comedy actor or something. I forget exactly where they were from, because he basically told me, he's like, I don't have time to talk to you because I'm on tour. And I'm like, well, you have to talk to me because you guys are here. She was our last show, March the 12th, 2020. I was like, you have to talk to me. I need what you know, and then it got to the point where I was like, hey, we're going to give them what the best, you know, we watched a couple of YouTube videos and it was like, okay, we're going to provide them the best that we can. And, you know, if they get here, we'll make it work and, you know, figure out what we can do. But they're out on tour. And if they don't make the time to advance the show or, you know, get in contact with you, or they could be calling you when they have a chance at 10 o'clock at night. Okay, so my show just ended. I'm trying to get the guys out for this show, but I have to go to the office to take a call to advance the show. So it could be really like, you know, a montage of things happening all at once. And you got to kind of compartmentalize and keep things straight. I used to be able to keep these things in my head when I was younger, but now I carry around a notepad or my iPad so I can make a note to trigger. Because I used to be really good at I remembered everything.
Yep.
But now it's like, oh, I know they told me what color was. Oh,
Mhm.
I can't remember. So you just carry around a notepad and whatever mechanism works for you to take notes and remember, whether it's a voice memo on your phone, do whatever you have to do, because you tell yourself, as we all do, oh, I'll remember this, and it goes away.
Yeah, I never remember anything, so I always write things down. I already learned that lesson. Right there with you.
Me too.
All right. So, have you guys ever had a situation? I'm assuming so, but yeah, I could be wrong. That there's a know-it-all musician on stage, thinks he knows your job better than you. Turns
Oh,
out
never.
you were right. Do you have any story for me?
I probably have a million of them. But honestly, here, it's one of those things like everyone has a bad gig
Mhm.
at one point in their life. I've had multiple. And honestly, I don't know anybody who hasn't had multiple.
They're lying.
Um,
They didn't. If they say they don't.
yeah. Is the artist always right? No. But as an engineer, I am going to listen to what they need. And so it might not make sense to me. But if it's what they need in order to do the best show they can do, then I'm going to try my best to give it to them. I don't think I've actually had to deal with anyone with severe hearing damage yet. At least not that I know. Well, yeah, actually, I probably have. But what they need in their monitors would probably sound atrocious to me in order to get it to the point where they can actually hear it clearly. And so, you know, there have definitely been instances where I've had artists that have told me what they needed and it didn't make any sense to me, but you know what? I'm going to do what I can. And I might have a conversation with them about why. Hey, this is kind of weird to me. Have you tried it this way? Or have you done this? I constantly get mansplained. That's a whole nother thing in itself. I could tell you stories of like I'm on stage holding microphones in one hand and cables in the other hand, and a band shows up and asks me where the sound person is. Well, actually, where the sound guy is.
Oh,
um, I'm used to it at this point. Like I've 25 years in this career. Like nothing surprises me anymore.
fair.
So it's just I think having the right attitude and being able to have conversations with people, because there are many ways to do things in this industry, and my way might not be the best way for somebody. And so I try to be open to that. Now, when I was younger, I probably would have had arguments. The reason I say I don't know specifics is because I tend to forget my worst shows and try to hold on to the really good ones.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. That's good. I'm assuming, Danielle, I don't know, you have anything there or not?
It's pretty much the same. Or you'll get a musician. Keyboardists do it often. Guitarists not so much. Sometimes they do. Or you get like as the monitor engineer. I mean, it affects front of house as well. But the monitor engineer, you give them what they need in monitors. The good level's good. They're good. But then they turn the keyboard down. It's just like they're always fiddling with the volume. It's like, well, okay, depending on the song or depending on their patch, they change the volume. Well, you can change all the patches in the world. I'm listening to what you're playing, but don't change the signal that you're giving me, because that affects everything. So that would probably be if I had to name an annoying thing or something that frustrates you. And you simply try to have a conversation, but at the end of the day, they may or may not listen, because that may be a nervous thing for them while they're performing. Or they may know, or they may think, oh, well, I'm going to play the horns on the next one, so let me turn it down. No, let me turn it down. Let me do my job. That's why it's called mixing. That's what I do. You give me good signal and I'll do the rest. But, that would probably be one of the most annoying things that I, constantly playing with your volume button. So, and then they keep asking you for stuff and not confirming. Whenever musicians ask for things, it's always helpful if you do a nod or something, because they're like, well, give me a little more. That's really relative. So it's kind of like you inch them up and you're looking at them, you're waiting for confirmation, and they just like go on and never say anything. But then once sound check is over, they go, "Oh, could you give me more of such and such?" And in your head, you're like, "Well, you could have told me that when we were doing that." But okay,
That's kind of what sound check's for.
right, right.
Well, yeah, that's so the sound. You know, that's a good point. Like sound check is definitely the time to like work out your monitor mix, but we also understand that things change, and like Danielle said, you know, when that adrenaline hits, when the band takes the stage and the volume goes up, all of a sudden the drummer's playing like, you know, twice as loud as he was during sound check. You know, we understand that things might change. A good sound engineer is really good at finding the like smallest subtlety in body language. And so like a nod like this, or just looking at me, or swinging your guitar this way, you know, I'm generally good at reading people like that. Sometimes I'm not. And, you know, there's definitely been some times where somebody has come up to me after the show and be like, well, I couldn't hear myself. Well, you didn't say anything, or I didn't get that message from you during the show.
Open communication both ways.
Yeah. So another thing, you know, kind of going back to the sound check thing, I always have guitarists go through their pedals as they play, and listen to levels. And guitarists need to be aware that pedals have different volumes, and being able to set them in a way that it is not a drastic change when you go between your clean and dirty, or you know, if you have a solo boost, a pedal that's going to, you know, compress or boost your solos, that we know where to set our levels for that. So, you know, when you're sound checking, you know, if you're a guitarist or a keyboardist, is the same, you know, same deal. Go through the different patches that you're going to be using so that we can actually hear them. A good engineer will probably ask you to do that anyway, but if they don't, it's a good idea for you to do it. So yeah.
All right, great tips. That's just amazing. All of that stuff. I did not expect it to get so in depth, but I'm actually really happy you guys did that, because I think that if anyone had any questions, they're probably answered at this point. I'm pretty sure. I love it. Absolutely. Okay, so enough about the technicalities and all of that. Let's talk a little bit about Soundgirls, right? So what's the mission? What's the history of it? Just tell me a little bit about it.
It started as a way for women in this industry to network with one another. Mm-hmm. And it grew so much. I think when they first started it, it was hey, I didn't know there were more women in this industry, because we're so shielded in our own little environments that we didn't really see each other a whole lot, right? So in my 25 years of working in Philly, I never met Danielle until we connected through Soundgirls.
Right.
So we worked in different circuits, in different venues, in different environments. But even the women that did work in the Philly venues, I might not never see them. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it was kind of this opportunity for us to kind of get to know each other and share our stories.
Okay.
There was some research done, you know, again, I don't know the years, but it basically said that only 5% of engineers or technical careers in the music industry are actually female or female identifying. Mm-hmm. And so from that, Soundgirls kind of took this turn as a way to empower more women to get into this field, to give an opportunity for mentorship, for training, a safe place to talk. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of offers all of those things. And I guess it was probably about, I don't know, 6-7 years ago that we started forming these local chapters. And so the Philadelphia chapter was born, and because I had already been involved with Soundgirls, I kind of became the de facto president. Mm-hmm. and I've been doing it ever since. So as in my role there, you know, I try to give the women that are members that are in our local community a chance to get together every once in a while, to offer ways that we might be able to do some kind of training or do some kind of workshop. It hasn't always worked out that way, I'm not gonna lie, but we do our best to do that. I think over the pandemic was we've met the most during the pandemic as we started actually having Zoom calls, which was great, because nobody has the same schedule. And especially in the music industry, whether you're in the studio or doing live sound or doing film or whatever aspect you're working in, our schedules are insane. You know, we might have a morning gig or we might have an evening gig. So where I might be free on a Tuesday night, Danielle's not free until Sunday afternoon, or, you know, so trying to get everyone together at once it does become really difficult. So, we just try to give as many opportunities for us to kind of come together. Through that, Ladybug approached us to actually have females do sound for the festival, which was one of the best things, I think, best partnerships that the local chapter has had. And that actually reached out to Soundgirls as a whole, because we had some women come from New York or from down south and actually came up just to do Ladybug Music Festival. So that was a really amazing opportunity and collaboration. We've also done a jazz festival in Philadelphia the same way, like just bringing in more opportunities for us to kind of empower more women in this industry. So
absolutely. And we loved having you guys.
yes.
Or should I say you girls at least.
There you go.
You girls did a really good job. I mean, we love having you every time. It's a pleasure. You know, any way we can empower women in any part of the music industry, regardless of whether they're on stage or not, I think is a very important,
Absolutely.
extremely thing to do these days. All right. So how can someone become involved in Soundgirls if they're in the general area or any other chapter?
It is so easy. First of all, there is a website, soundgirls.org. I believe I sent you the link tree if you want to share that out with people. And so they're very active on Facebook. There is an Instagram. I want to say there's a Twitter. I'm not active on Twitter, so I don't follow it that much. But there's a very active Facebook group. And so if you are interested in joining, go to the website. There's membership information on there. You can also just reach out to me. My social media is somewhere as well. And I'll be happy to help you join. If you're in the Philadelphia area, I will put you in the Philadelphia chapter. And if you're in another area, I can introduce you to whoever is in that area.
All righty. I noticed that your website had a lot of resources for women as well in the industry. I just wanted you to kind of explain a few of those and what people might be surprised to find there.
So there are a lot of blogs written by women in this industry. So some of them are experiences that we've had. Some of them are instructional guides on how to do things, maybe how to get started in this field. So there's a lot of information about that if you are interested in becoming an audio engineer. There are a lot of, how do I get started articles. There are a lot of dealing with sexual harassment resources, because that is still something that happens in this industry. There are a lot of workshop opportunities. So not only in Philadelphia, but nationwide, worldwide, really, because we have chapters in other countries as well, where there might be a different workshop that you can go and check out, different meetups, things like that. One of the best things I think to come out of the pandemic is the Soundgirls podcast. which has interviews with different women in the industry. There is a living history of some of the game changers, females that have been in this industry, whether it is producing, mixing, mastering, live sound. There's tons of that kind of information on there. What else is on there? Yeah, just I mean, like you name it, there's probably an article on it.
No, I was very surprised that when I went there and I was checking it out, I'm like, wow, this is really much more than just a website about the company. It's not just about Soundgirls, join Soundgirls, like blah blah blah. There's actually a lot of really great information for any woman in the industry, including those who work in any capacity at a live music event. I think that would help them as well.
Yeah, and studio as well. So we have a lot of members that do audio for film, some mastering engineers, mixing engineers. So it's not just live sound. There are tons of things that you can find for every aspect of this industry, even the business side of it.
Cool. All right, so we're gonna do a little quick lightning round here. So these are gonna be quick answers, as quick as you can give them. I know this never works, but we're gonna try it. I'm gonna go on my screen. Barb's on top and Danielle's on the bottom, but I don't know how it's gonna end up when this goes live. But anyway, I'm just gonna go, like this for Barb, and I'm gonna go like this for Danielle.
Okay.
And we'll answer that way. All right. Biggest or most fun band you've worked with?
Oh, Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder. Okay, that all included. I know I'm not going to make it fast. It was all included in the Thelonious Monk Institute of Jazz Gala. So that's where I worked with both of those. And yeah, there you go.
That trumps everything. Game over.
I almost want to ask you the same question just because I'm curious. So I'm going to go down on this one.
I would have to say the two tours that I went on, Lettucey and Fred Hammond.
All right, cool. Down here again. How have you ever been awestruck? Have you ever been awestruck by someone you're working with and messed up?
Yeah, no, it didn't mess up. Internally, I have a totally different conversation than what I expose. I thank God I've always remained composed, calm, but inside I could be screaming. When I was PM for a El DeBarge concert, and I had El DeBarge posters on my wall as a child. So as a teenager. So when I got to meet him, he was like, "Hi, Danielle." I was like, "Oh my God," he said my name. But of course I was like, "Pleasure to meet you," blah, 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 so yeah.
I love it. Okay. Up here, do you prefer tour life or working at a venue?
I think working in a venue. It changes every day. I get to meet lots of different acts. So I get to stay home with my family.
All right. Indoor or outdoor venues?
Indoor.
Any particular reason?
Yes, because I've worked the Democratic National Convention. It was 101 degrees in Philadelphia and I was outside. So yeah, yeah.
All right. Down here again. Best snack for a long day at a festival?
I'm glad you got this one, Danielle.
Yeah, I was going to say best as in healthiest or best that I enjoyed, because those are two different situations.
There's no judging here.
Okay, I would say ice cream.
Got it. All right, water or sports drinks for all day energy?
Soda.
No, other is okay.
I mean, no, water. Drink lots of water. I always tell my students, it's so funny because I always tell my students, like, do as I say, not as I do, because I have the worst like eating habits and like drinking habits. But having water and healthy snacks definitely get you through a day better than sugar and soda.
Yes.
Got it. All right. Perfect. That was the lightning round. That was good. Thank you.
I'm not good at lightning.
Hey, that was actually pretty good compared to some of the ones I've tried to do.
Oh, that's good.
I think it helped that there's two of you, so I could, go back and forth. All right. So I asked this of everyone that I interview. What one piece of advice would you each give to your past selves to kind of get you to where you are faster or easier?
Don't be afraid.
I was daggone Barbara. You make me. I was going to say be fearless, but okay.
Yeah. I see yours sounds better. There you go. Be fearless. Yeah, I wish I had better networking skills back then. And I wish I had taken more chances. I might be actually in a different place than I am right now. I'm happy where I'm at, don't get me wrong. But I think if I had been more eager to try out new opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty much the same, but also because I came from a different industry, it took me a while to actually say what I did, like to say that I'm an audio engineer, and I actually stopped doing it for free. Like I was always helping people and doing things, and because I wasn't, I didn't have experience per se, or it took me a while to actually say I am an audio engineer, like because I didn't go to school for it, but I went through the school of hard knocks of gaining the experience. So I would say, piggyback off the whole fear thing, own your skill set
and know your worth.
Absolutely.
That absolutely, and I'll have. I'm just a nice person, but
can you start that over again? Right when you?
Yeah. To know your worth.
Mm-hmm.
I it's something I still struggle with today in knowing what value I bring to a gig and making sure that I'm compensated in a way that is worth that.
Absolutely.
I think when we start off, we oftentimes do a lot of things for free, and people kind of get used to that.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you need to stand your ground and be like, no, this is my time, and this is what I am worth. And that's an issue in this industry in general. I think when it comes to production, and I know you're going to have a lot of artists that watch this. So know the value of the engineers that you work with. We do not do this as a hobby. We do this as a career. And it takes a lot of time, not only to build the skills to do what we do, but time in our day. We're the first to arrive at a venue, and we're going to be the last to leave the venue.
Yep.
And so understanding that and considering that when you ask somebody to come and work for you.
Absolutely. No, that's amazing. Just everybody make sure to love your engineers.
Yes.
Treat them like family, because they're going to be the ones who make you sound good at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
They've got all the controls, right? Okay. So if an artist would like to work with the Soundgirls or have you guys come out and do a show, what's the best way for them to get in touch for that?
So they have me on social media. You can share. So at Soundarella is my social media. Facebook at The Real Soundarella on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And you guys can share my email address. So soundarella@verizon.net.
Okay. Perfect. And I think you got all the handles. I think we got the address. I think all I have left to do is to thank you, ladies, for a really great interview. Some really good insight on the world of sound engineers and how artists can, do what they can to get the best sound, even if they don't have a sound engineer available to them. So really, really appreciate your guys' time, girls' time today. It's hard to get out of that.
It is, right?
It is. We've been taught. But anyway, I thank everybody for watching as well. If you like what you saw, go ahead and smash the bell. Leave us any comments that you have. Did we answer all your questions? Do you have any other questions for the Soundgirls? Is there anyone else you want us to talk to? Any other topics you want us to cover? Other than that, we are good for the day, and we will see you guys next time with Interview with the Experts. Bye.